How are you? And I say, welcome, all beautiful souls, to this live stream. Um, I'm glad to be back. I'm just going to see if I am functioning on YouTube today, just to make sure, because the last time um, I didn't do it at all. So, oh, yes, I'm on. Hi. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's been a minute, and I just got to put this into perspective. My father passed away yesterday on Mother's Day. He'd been sick for a few days before that. He was nursing home bound. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs, but it is definitely, and as many of you know who have lost people close to you, an emotional, like, sort of space and place. And depending upon your relationship with that individual, um, it could be extremely disruptive. And it has been disruptive to me intuitively, intellectually, um, heartly. But things have to go on, okay? And so, welcome, beautiful souls. Let me just put on my little captions because I do like to welcome everybody. Love lights, welcome all. Okay, today I wanted to get in last week to this idea of soulless. I had mentioned the soulless in my last live stream. Okay, and so I really want to talk about what I'm calling the Soulless Renaissance, and it being it's time to choose. Okay, and so welcome all, welcome all, welcome all, welcome all. And I will just say, if something in this live stream or when you watch it later um, hits home, or you want to comment or have something that it stirred up in you, I want you to comment. It'd be nice if you liked, because that helps the algorithm and for other people to hear this, the important messages that I'm having downloaded into me and moving through me out into this space and many other virtual spaces and spaces in this 3D reality, right? So the like and subscribe. Like is good for the algorithm. Subscribe, I guess, is good too, for the algorithm. I'm not sure. I'm still learning this medium, this right here, this YouTube. And so hit subscribe so you can be up on the latest uploaded clips or like shorts, and video uploads, and then live streams. Okay. And I do want to apologize for advertising the Soulless last week, and then all that happened and I was unable. Well, I was doing it and then something happened and I went back to it, and I never did press go live. So forgive me for that. I was ensconced in my father's condition. And I may still be ensconced as well. Give me a second. Sorry about that. My son's in town, as many folks know, or who've ever, I don't know. If anybody cares, my son is in town from New York, right? And he's visiting, and he was just calling me. Um, and so it's our after Mother's Day. So forgive that interruption as well. But I have this. My goal was to expand on the discussion, or the little tidbit I got into around soulless. Okay. And this is the Soulless Renaissance that I'm talking about. And I just want to go back to the beginning of when this download was beginning to take shape in me regarding this conversation. I was watching the news and I saw a shot. Um, it was, a video of these folks talking in the halls in Congress. Okay. And there was something off about what I was seeing. And I have it here. And this was sort of the beginning of the Soulless download. Okay. I saw this on TV. They were talking. It actually was on my phone. They were talking, and I snapped a screenshot of it because it was impacting me on such a profound level. And so I kept ruminating over this picture, meditating on it. I couldn't stop looking at it because it just seemed, its composition was just so interesting. And when I looked at it through my cosmic eyes, I guess my third eye, but in a very expanded way, it seemed like there was the gauntness in the face, dark shadows, sort of like maybe not fully a human type of energy that I was getting. It was just disturbing, to say the least, right? And this rumination and sitting in this photo is what allowed the download of the idea soulless to come into me. I'm not saying I haven't seen or read about soulless before, but this picture, the download I received over days. Nobody could see this when I looked at it but me at that time. I don't know if anybody else can see what I see and sense, a knowing that a brokenness, shallow, gaunt, what's the word? Sort of like, I can't describe it. What I sensed, it was a knowing, and I do talk about it a little bit more cogently in my script today. But I just want everyone to know that it was this particular shot, this video that I captured a screenshot of, that enabled the soulless download into me and applied to this, and what this picture stood for and what was beneath, which a lot of people, I'm sure, were not sensing. But this is the picture. And so today I'm talking about, the soulless Renaissance, okay? And I think it's really important to understand a Renaissance is a rebirth. And I use that just as a framing because this isn't really a rebirth. It's a resurgence. It's a resurgence. And the soulless are here for a particular reason. Okay? So I may put this up as I go on. I'm going to leave it up right now. And I downloaded my notes, printed them out. I usually read them on the screen. But I want to be available to the sheet to write notes because there might be other downloads as I'm discussing this. And so the soulless, like I said, is not a new concept. Okay? In a video I talked about in emotional misattunement, I talked about emotional death or being emotionally dead. Okay? And that is a part of the soulless. Okay? And I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback because I have been getting a lot of pushback about some of my, some of the things I'm talking about in regards to America, right? I'm sorry. And I'm going to say, why are you bashing on America? African Americans died and whatever this stuff. And, we died to make this place. And I'm coming from a spiritual, a metaphysical, approach when I talk about these things. I'm not denigrating any group, but I am in these conversations, I guess, sort of unveiling my own bias, right? To some degree, as a Black woman in America who has faced a lot of challenges, avoidable, unreasonable, egregious, hurtful challenges as a Black woman trying to succeed in white spaces, okay? And so people say, but that's your own projection. I am Black, and there is a judgment of me as a Black woman in these spaces. So it's not a projection. It is what I am observing. And there's another video on my channel that talks about, looking at behavior as to know what a person really feels about you. And I have observed this behavior in patterned ways throughout my life. Okay. And so, yeah, and it's not just me, it's other folks. Okay. That sense this. I'm not saying soulless, but that have experienced this. So I'm not denigrating Black folks. What I am denigrating, I'm not denigrating, but what I am questioning, which is part of the spiritual evolution. That's why I'm even on this idea of the soulless, because they are very relevant in the Earth's ascension and moving to a higher vibration, right? The soulless are integral to the evolution, to the ascension. The evolution that Bruce Bynum, I believe that's his full name, speaks about, and the spiritual ascension that many spiritual teachers and guides and mystics are saying is happening right now. And I have also talked about this evolution in my reels, and I've talked about the surgence of psychic readings evolved into more an expanded field, spiritual this, spiritual that. Granted, most of these things that are being positioned as spiritual are purely to make money, okay? Purely to make money, right? And that's fine. I did have some problems there, but whatever floats somebody's boat. It's a problem for those people that buy into that and sort of seek a spirituality through these products and packages and how people are understanding their spirituality. As I keep saying, spirituality is an innate thing. It can't be given to you by somebody else because that framing is for their life. I'm just saying that there is an explosion, though, of metaphysical, quantum physics, just an explosion of how we can discern our collective humanity and come to understand our own self-sovereignty as guided by something other than doctrine and social systems. There is an explosion. So there are many, like I said, teachers, guides, and mystics who understand this as the Earth's ascension. I understand it as a spiritual evolution because I hearken back to, and I don't have his name, it's Bynum, Bruce Bynum. There's another name in there. I'm sorry, I look behind me because I have it on my little stand back there. So other people have talked about the soulless. And so I'm just going to go through some of the ways real quick. So you don't think this is just me, like that man got on me. Now, I got a whole bunch of issues. I mean, we had to build this place. We had no choice. We had to build America. And then we had to fight for our rights to be like white people. And that's because they wouldn't allow us to just live. So we had to figure out how to fight for rights to fit into their system. And yes, I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people fighting for it, but I have a problem with the narrow view of what was possible, right? Um, of what was possible, right? Because we see he's getting on me about beating up on things about America and African Americans, but I did not mention African Americans. But look. I take everybody for where they are. I'm a trauma informed spiritualist. Okay, I take people where they are. Everybody has trauma, struggle, whatever. And yes, they did build America because they were forced to build America, and we fought to be included because we thought that was probably the right thing to do. And as you just heard, I think it was very, I mean, we had to because it was just disgusting. And folks on the other side needed to know that they needed to treat us with humanity. Okay. And that's weird, but you have to have policies and laws to have people treat you like you are human. As you'll see, this is important. But again, for those of you who may be tuning in, it is this picture that served as a download. So I'm going to go through a little bit of background about how the soulless have been perceived, just so it gets a little bit more meat and potatoes to this idea, to this discussion I'm having today. So for those of you who think all Black stuff is pseudoscience, I could care less about you, okay? Black conscious traditions have been naming spiritual vacancy, domination, and soul loss and soulless for an extremely long time. And over that course of time, the language has varied, right? Public Enemy, yeah, my time. Ask, how do you sell soul to a soulless people who sold theirs? Cornel West speaks of spiritual decay, market emptiness, and a culture so saturated by greed that people become indifferent to suffering. Keep looking at the picture that's on the screen. Okay. Bell Hooks. She's, Bell Hooks has walked with me through this most of my late 20s all the way to now. She's played a pivotal role in how I think about myself as a Black woman, and how I understand this society and their relationship with Black women. And so Bell Hooks teaches that domination and love cannot occupy the same field, because domination depends on fear, obedience, and the refusal to recognize another person's full humanity. Back to that picture. You might say, well, they care about people. Look, push the better, protect Capitol Hill staffers. The protections already should have been there. Anyway, no, we've been in operation a long time. And now all of a sudden, we got to protect the women. In Black esoteric spaces, teachers such as Bobby Hemmett have spoken more directly about soulless people, vessels, and the metaphysical implications of spiritual emptiness. Together, these voices situate the issue of soulless inside a broader Black spiritual and intellectual concern. What happens when a society sells its soul to power, money, fear, and control? Now, there are other schools of thought that see all white folks as being soulless. In particular, Dr. Osei Kufuor, Kufuor. Kufuor, Dr. Osei Kufuor, right? very, very, I'm not going to say extreme, uh, but there may be understanding as you see what's happening now as to why Black folks may go to expand that to everyone that is not melanated. Okay. And so this concern of soulless also appears in older and contemporary esoteric traditions that are not Black. A gentleman or a woman named G.D. Purucker, he writes from a theosophical tradition, describes the soulless not as beings without any inner principle, but whose soul is no longer actively governing life. Okay. His language connects soullessness with selfishness, ambition, acquisition, anger, appetite, and the dominance of lower impulses, low vibrations, low frequencies. Okay. Bernhard Gunther, working in contemporary esoteric commentary, discusses soulless humans, organic portals, and NPC-like consciousness, those people who operate primarily through conditioned habits, social scripts, reactive behaviors, rather than critical thought or intentional self-awareness. That could be a lot of people. As forms of human presentation that may mimic social and emotional behavior without true spiritual depth. And then Kingsley Dennis places the issue inside a wider collective transformation, arguing that humanity is passing through a period, I will expand on this, where negative forces, shadow material, and unconscious patterns become visible before they can be transmuted. So I am not using the word soulless as a metaphor for ordinary human struggle. I'm not talking about someone having a difficult season, moving through trauma, lacking emotional skill, or needing spiritual growth. I am talking about a real, low frequency, collective presence that thrives in reality, that thrives in a reality built around fear, separation, scarcity, competition, material obsession, and control. Those are the very conditions that allow the soulless to retain power. And the soulless, they've always been awake, but they are actively awakened. And they are gathering, communing, coalescing, controlling, capturing, because they know this evolutionary spiritual shift threatens the reality that has sustained them, that is sustaining them. Okay, the soulless understands at some level that a collective spiritual awakening makes their frequency and their place. I'm going to talk about this country, in our country, it makes their frequency obsolete. Okay, and so again, this picture was the source of download for this presentation. I'm going to move back to me. So, as I've mentioned, we are in a spiritual evolution, and as I said, some say ascension. And there's an earthly and collective conscious evolution from a 3D reality in which we live. This is a 3D reality into a 5D reality. Now, I know 5D, some people talk about being a crystalline form and all this stuff. Everybody has their perspective on 5D. I'm not going into that realm. I'm using 5D as an axis around which the spiritual evolution is situated. And I'll talk more about that. And so the 3D, this is a movement from scarcity, pain, fear, like I said, isolation, into discernment, 5D. Discernment, collective sense of our shared humanity and compassion. The 5D is a higher vibration compared to the 3D. Okay? It's a higher vibration, a higher consciousness, and a higher sense of spiritual oneness and wholeness. Between the 3D and this 5D evolutionary shift is something called the fourth dimensional bridge phase. Okay? We're in the fourth dimensional bridge phase. And this has been, or is connected with all of these humongous, just great planetary shifts in the cosmos, things that we haven't seen in 80,000, like 10,000 years, causing massive shifts, because all that is part of this shakeup, the spiritual shakeup. Okay? And so between the 3 and the 5D is the 4D bridge phase, okay, in which we are being shown and bearing witness to people, places, and things that are anti-progressive, anti-collective, anti-compassionate humanity, equaling anti-spiritual growth, and anti-existing in a high vibration. Okay? And in this 4D bridge phase, for many, it seems like everything is falling apart and frightening. I could see that. You know, the pressure many people feel is not only emotional fatigue right now. It's like one thing after another, right? And it's not only political frustration, although it's pretty profound in the political sphere. But it is a strain of living inside this 4D bridge phase and sensing the energy of the soulless attempting to preserve this 3D reality. The bridge space, it serves as a moment when, just to make sure I'm saying this clearly, it serves at a moment where old patterns can come forward. And old patterns, I mean old from the beginning, come forward and are rebirthed, reestablished, so that they can be recognized, processed, healed, and released. Okay? The problem is that what needs to be released will often fight to remain in power. For every action, there's a reaction, sometimes greater and with more force. So everything that's occurring, there's something that's occurring back to it. I don't know if that sounded really elementary, but, you know, for every action, there's one right back at it, and sometimes bigger. Okay? And so the soulless stand together against collective ascension in every way. They know, even if only through instinct, that a humanity moving into unity, love, cooperation, and embodied awareness will not continue to serve the same old dead structures. Okay? So the souls are reacting to spiritual displacement. All right? Their low frequency is sustained by a world, a 3D reality where fear can be monetized, suffering can be politicized, attention can be fractured, and human worth can be measured through usefulness, transactional. Okay? A shift toward 5D consciousness threatens the entire arrangement because regeneration requires real values, living values. Look, empathy, compassion, cooperation, joy, soul alignment, and shared responsibility. Okay? So the soulless, all of them, are being unveiled. They're communing, coalescing, expanding. They do not care. We can analyze, discuss, assume, interpret, while their tactics are not new. To most, what is happening is a surprise, okay? However, the soulless offer breadcrumbs for sustenance, as we see literally. The pieces are being consumed to distract people from really understanding what's happening in the moment, to see the patterns and the spiritual malady, what it has captured. I mean, it was already a spiritual malady all this time. Racism is a spiritual malady. America is based on racism. It is driven by racism. Everything here is racism. If you don't believe me, go on YouTube and listen to some of these white men who are talking about white supremacy. I'm not saying it. They're saying it. Okay? And the people are consuming these crumbs because they believed, or they believe America's different. And so they keep eating them. Okay? In denial, not wanting to see anything. I don't know, to sit and be mad for a minute, have an upset stomach, and keep it stepping. You know, once these patterns are clearly discerned, and they can be discerned, the only reason why they're not being clearly seen is because of the erasure and the denial of all that has made, all that has been put into America to this point, and the way it has been put into America to this point. So once patterns are discerned and understood as truisms, what is true? Patterns are like behaviors. They don't lie. Once it's understood, release becomes possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the soulless, okay? And I'm going to try to, this may be 2 parts, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about who the soulless are, okay? And for that, I'm going to bring back up the handy little picture here to give us a place marker of who and what I'm talking about. It's not just Republicans, right? It's anybody who supports this. Anybody, okay? Anybody who refuses to understand their own racism. And contrary to popular belief, only one group in this country is racist. Reverse racism, it's such a lie. Racism is built upon a system of economics and money, right? Exploitation. And not any time in the history of this country have Black people had slaves around money. Now, we can tease that apart forever, and I'm not about semantics or word games here. This is a download. This is a download from the cosmic consciousness, the collective consciousness, okay? And so where am I at? So the spiritual displacement. I'm putting this back up here. Oh, to talk more about who are the soulless. Oh, I was saying anybody who refuses to, anybody who sits and watches harm come to others in any way is a soulless person. I don't care if they're denying it. I don't care what is happening in that person. Anybody that does not feel a deep sense of wrong in regards to slavery, the way Blacks are treated in America, always have been, and no, it's never been equal. Anybody who can watch immigrants, brown immigrants, Mexicans, Mexicans, who else? Venezuelans, Chinese. I don't think Chinese are being thrown into these concentration camps, but anybody who can justify that and seek to find a justification behind that is also part of this group. Okay? The soulless are emotionally dead. And somebody would argue with me that there's some redemption. Perhaps. The soulless are able to move comfortably through 3D reality. And the reason why I say comfortably, because there are masses of people who exist in this reality and don't feel a part of it. Right? They don't feel a part of it. At a psychic level, it's just like for me, an allergic reaction. I just can't go. I can't do this. right? I never felt part of this reality, and I always questioned there was something wrong with me. But there are many people who exist like this. But then there are others who deny what they're feeling and just keep stepping, and that denial can actually turn into emotional death. And then there are others who just like, yeah, this works for me. Because this 3D reality is built around the very frequencies that feed the soulless. And I've talked about those: the fear, separation, scarcity. It's my scarcity, pain, matrix of fear, right? This is what they feed on, okay? The soulless. And there's pictures up there for a reason. Somebody's going to say, you don't know them people. I don't have to know these people. I look at their behavior, the patterns in their speech, what they say over and over again, their patterns in what they don't do. Let me just say something. When all this started happening and there was this sort of, weird, like, I don't know if y'all seen the Planet of the Apes. I forget which which movie this is, but there's like this group of nuclear fallout people who live underground, and they're all together, and they have these chants they all say together, and they're all aligned with some ideology that is not necessarily holistic. And many times when you see this cultish behavior, it's behind closed doors. It's out here, right? And so this behavior was very hard for me to see. The claps in the Congress all at the same time, and USA, and everybody's saying the same thing or talking gibberish their way, but gibberish, like in important meetings. They all had the same jibber jab. And, I'm like, because I've been in the research field for a while, I think I was talking to my son, and I was like, science is always leaps and bounds ahead of what we see in the here and now. There are things that they're doing that we don't know because it will scare the crap out of us. And at that time, I thought that perhaps these people had all had some sort of AI implant in their body or brain that would make them do this like this. Like all get on this bandwagon of death and destruction. But like I said, when I saw this picture, I understood it not as AI at that time. I understood it as the soulless. And so in the 3D field, right, the soulless they thrive because conscious is treated as a weakness, okay? Compassion is a liability, and money is the highest proof of value. And this is why their collective gathering is not random at all. They're gathered around the structures that keep that old world intact. And people will say, well, they're just racists coming together to, to whatever. Okay, yes, that is happening. But for every action is a reaction. This is a spiritual ascension. The souls are here, have been this renaissance of reemergence. Reveals their instinct of vulnerability, their instinct of being threatened. Maybe it harkens back to the Neanderthal gene. They did the genome, and there is a group of folks, Caucasian, and this is genomics, genetics. This is not me at all. Where their gene really is embedded in Neanderthal, right? Other people's genes are not rooted there. Okay, so maybe it's an instinct of deep vulnerability and threatening that draws up this, it's either you or me. I don't know how Neanderthals live. I don't know if they have spirituality, but I'm sure that they would kill and destroy anybody who tried to threaten their territory, their women, their people, their ideas, what they thought was supposed to be the way to do things. And I'm not saying all this is denigrate a group of people. I mean, that's a fact. That's in the genome mapping. It's a fact. Okay? And so I've talked about money and money being dead. And money is central here because the soulless really don't have any authentic spiritual placement, and so they can thrive off of dead things with no energy because their frequency is so low. Okay? And many folks have taken up this low frequency and believe in money and see it as power. Money is dead. So, and this is not money as a practical tool to buy things. Money as a dead spiritual substitute. Money has no soul, no spirit, no energy, okay? No frequency, no vibration, no wisdom, no conscious, no compassion, no sacred intelligence. Although they have the pyramid on there with an eye. In God we trust. There's some sick stuff. Putting that on a piece of paper. That is really a problem. Causing problems. Not that, it's like a gun. You give a gun to somebody, it's the person who's using it, that's the problem. You give money to somebody, it's the person who's using it. That's the problem. Okay? So, and money only carries the meaning people project onto it, all right? So in a 3D consciousness, money becomes an idol because it gives the illusion of safety, separation, superiority, control, permanence, legacy. The soulless cling to that illusion because it allows them to dominate without ever becoming spiritually alive. And I know pushback. And yeah, I'm keeping this on the screen because this is where the download occurred with this picture. And so I know people are like, well, there's Christianity. We're trying to make this a Christian country. I'm not going to get into religious doctrine, but I will get into the fact that the soulless can mimic, like that movie Mimic with the alien that can mimic people, mimic being human. They can mimic religiosity. They can mimic things. They can say Christian all day and night. Again, what are the patterns? And don't be naive. Don't give an interpretation or discussion about could be this, could be that. No. As a researcher, we have to look at what we see and interpret it based on what we see, not our judgment about what we see. Yes, we're using our interpretive lens to place meaning on it, but we're not changing what we're actually seeing to fit something else. And at some point, there has to be an objective reality. I mean, when I was coming up in research, I hated that word because there's nothing objective, right? Because everything comes from somebody's bias. What they see, what they measure, how they measure, the tools they use is all based on somebody's bias. Even how they see it, because all our senses, our perceptual tools are unique to us, and they're all different. So it behooves us to stop lying to ourselves about what's really going on. Even if you don't believe in soulless, stop lying to ourselves or being in denial. Because what did Doshi say? Denial is what? I hope it was something challenging. I can't remember what she said. I like Doshi. So, and this is why the obsession with wealth is here, but it's not just greed. It's a spiritual deadness organized into a worldview. When money becomes the master value, human life gets measured through usefulness, productivity, ownership, and cost. And then they're stratified, placed in places based on that. Care becomes too expensive. Poverty becomes a personal failure. Illness is a burden. I mean, all this stuff is making sense. I don't know if you can see it, but I see all of this activated in the here and now. War is a strategy for money, wealth. Detention becomes order, right? You gotta put people in their places so that we the soulless can be the ones. Social support is a weakness. Cutting the money, Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps. You can say whatever you want. The majority of people on welfare are Caucasians, okay? There's nothing wrong with that, because I've been on social services twice, 3 times, and got off and kept stepping. And many people I know have been on social services, but the Black and brown people don't make up the most people on social services. Okay? A billionaire becomes more trusted than a healer. And we see this. A teacher, a mother, a worker, a community elder, because 3D consciousness makes mistakes accumulation for authority. The souls are drawn to this arrangement because it protects them from the demands of the soul. A living soul must feel. It must remain accountable. This picture's up there because, again, my download of Soulless occurred here, and it is a point of reference for what is actually happening in our country right now. Okay? If you missed the beginning of this video where I explained how my download came down about this picture, I encourage you to go back to the beginning and listen to it to put it into perspective, especially before you make a comment. Okay? There's nothing worse than comments made on misinformation or not understanding information or not even engaging the information. I like comments that come from in here that are unique and authentic, not just some parroted social conditioning. So I challenge you. You make a comment, make it authentic. So where am I at? A billionaire becomes trusted, and 3D consciousness mistakes accumulation for authority. And the soulless are drawn to this arrangement because it protects them from the demands of the soul. A living soul must feel. It must reckon with things. It must remain accountable to something beyond appetite or image. And again, I got this picture up there as a reference here. The soulless do not want that kind of accountability. Their power depends on remaining untouched by the suffering they cause or benefit from. They're not seeking regeneration. They are seeking retention of wealth, control, hierarchy, retention of the systems that keep fear circulating through the collective body. And that is why we have to name the characteristics, right? Because I'm just talking about the soulless, and I did talk about the emotionally dead in another video, but I'm going to talk about these characteristics again. And I may end up there because I'm already going on 49 minutes, and I do tend to do long videos, okay? I'm going to try to keep it down a little bit. The soulless lack genuine empathy. They do not meaningfully connect with human suffering. Even when they know how to perform concern, they perform concern, but don't have the connection to feeling. They manipulate feeling instead of being transformed by it. And we can see some of this in the ways in which certain populations are being talked to in ways that pull them in to this scarcity, pain, matrix of fear that the suffering, the soulless love to be in, right? And so they use charm, outrage, victimhood, moral language, and public performances to control perception. Their relationships are utilitarian. People become objects, tools, threats, labor, symbols, or entertainment. Their emotional field is cold because they do not orient toward communion, although they are communing with each other in this soulless way. There's like a frequency, that low frequency, that is so, it's like a radar. You know how people go up in the movies and put something on a mountain so that they could be rescued? Well, the soulless planted this beacon, and folks are coming. Other soulless entities are coming, communing in that way, not communing in a more holistic, spiritual way. They're oriented toward possession of everything. And that is a long history pattern. So cruelty does not interrupt them, not at all, because cruelty serves the old frequency, serves their low frequency. And that, like I said, they will mimic. Oh, I don't feel this way. I don't know. They will mimic. What's that? The smoke and mirrors? They will mimic. If suffering helps preserve power, clearly they justify it. Clearly they are justifying it in the here and now. If fear keeps people obedient, they amplify it. All this is happening now. Okay? If war protects dominance, they sanitize it. This is happening now. The sanitization is to situate it as some religious war, having prayer in the Pentagon about a war, sanitizing it. If social media divides reality into competing emotional camps, they use the division. This is how they were able to maneuver. This and people think they're interacting with social media like what they're seeing, like back in the day, like what they're seeing was just grassroots, right? Just a concerted effort to move people into varying emotional camps, varying spiritual camps. Okay? This is why the soulless are not merely scattered individuals. They are gathering collectively wherever 3D structures can protect them. And America is rife with the belief that what is happening here in this 3D reality is absolutely real. Refuse to see the illusion because it's too hard for people to think about that. The conditioning is so strong. And that's why the shakeup is so wild, because so many people are conditioned to be asleep and function as automatons through the way they've been raised, through their religious teachings, through what they learn in school, the social scripts. That's what they know. That's it. The shakeup is to wake people up. And those are the people who are not soulless. Those are the people who've been conditioned into a pattern of believing and knowing that is separated from anything that is true, anything that is real. So, as this picture shows, the soulless are visible in the political arena. That's the halls of power, right? Halls of power, making money, things like that. And they could treat humans as disposable through policies and laws. Either they're enacting them or erasing them. They're visible in detention centers, as we see. They're visible in the policies they give, as I just said. They're visible with billionaires shaping the government, where wealth is replacing a democratic will, Although, I talked about us being in a representative democracy. Somebody was like, we're in a constitutional republic, whatever. We're supposed to have a representative democracy. Whatever she said does not discount the fact that what we claim here is a representational democracy. And they want to replace that so-called representative democracy. They want to replace moral wisdom with some wrong Christian, some more wrong moral wisdom. I don't know if any of you heard this or saw this, but Pete Hegseth was doing sort of prayer with all these people in the audience, and he was citing some scripture, and he actually was using the scripture as it was played out in what is that movie with Samuel Jackson and John Travolta, I think, movie by Quentin Tarantino. He quoted the exact same fake verse and added in not words from that movie, but words from whatever he was trying to do. Okay, so replace more wisdom and spiritual accountability. Yeah, spiritual accountability. And social media has become one of their gathering places because it separates people into fractured realities. It trains attention away from inner knowing. That's the real problem with social media. Okay? And toward reaction, outrage, humiliation, envy, contempt, laughter. I mean, it has some good stuff if you can maintain your inner knowing, but a lot of people lose it. And they just start talking all kinds of stuff. I mean, I've seen some really crazy things coming out of people's mouths and their behavior on social media that were really disturbing. Okay? And so the soulless are sustained by division, okay? A divided collective is easier to drain and train and contain. A fearful collective can be controlled. And if we're distracted, they can take us anywhere, all right? A money-obsessed collective is easier to buy. Easier to buy. In this 4D bridge phase, the soulless are being unveiled because the collective awakening threatens the frequency that feeds them, as I said. A humanity moving toward 5D consciousness cannot continue to organize itself around dead money, dead status, a dead hierarchy. Yes, something still functioning here called white supremacy. I mean, come on now. If we really want that to really be forefronted, I mean, what the hell was all the stuff that, look, it's not amazing to me, but it is quite interesting that we continue to want these same hierarchies and dead performance. The picture is up here because I saw death in this performance on the news. I saw Soulless. I saw Gaunt. I saw Automaton. I saw Cult. I mean, just the way their heads are turning and facing different directions. A shoal of fish. Well, fish do swim in the same direction, but they go off on the sides, but they all stay in the same mix. So humanity is moving toward a 5D consciousness, as I said, because we can't continue to organize ourselves around a dead way of being. A regenerative consciousness requires empathy, cooperation, compassion, joy, unity, spiritual sovereignty, and living connection. This picture that I had a download on doesn't show any energy of connection or compassion. It's really devoid. And again, this is not the beginning and end of my conversation, this picture on the screen is just a point of reference for what I'm talking about and where my download came. And so they're fighting back aggressively in this 4D bridge phase. You know, when we awaken, who knows how many will awaken. But when that happens, the soulless lose the cover of confusion because we will be able to discern. And if people return to the body, manipulation loses its force because we don't like the way it feels. It will be so uncomfortable. And if we release scarcity, which is part of my whole power release program, money loses its dead authority. We're always going to need some money in this reality right now. The ascension, who knows what's possible? If people choose unity, division loses its grip. If people claim spiritual sovereignty, external control no longer rules our inner world. So when I ask, who are the soulless? I am naming a real collective force that has gathered around the world and in America because the old world sustains them. They are not trying to evolve with humanity or can even sense it. They sense it as an instinct and a vulnerability and as a threat. They're trying to keep humanity bound to the 3D field where fear, money, scarcity, and control appear powerful. So our task is not to soften that truth. Not, if you're looking at this, not for you to start. I mean, look, you can pick apart what I'm sharing with you now, but reflect on it. See if you're seeing the soulless or the lack of connection, real emotion and empathy. People looking in different directions because they really don't care. Why are they not all looking at the camera? There's a lot here. It's very interesting. They're not trying to evolve. They want to keep us organized within the scarcity pain matrix of fear. So the task is to recognize it clearly, because recognition is the first movement toward release. I'm going to leave it here today because I have like 3 more pages, which will probably take another hour. So yes, the Soulless Renaissance. It is time to choose because it's time for you to wake up. It's time for you to see. It's time for all of us to see and to understand this is not politics. It's a spiritual melody that is seeking to take ownership over all that we know. As there's so much spiritual expansion and growth. Everybody has their window of opening. I just ask you right now to sit in perhaps what I'm saying, go back and look at the live stream, emotional misattunement, get to the last discussion of emotional death, and just place it in your field of vision and as your lens and see what you see through that lens. And then come talk to me, make a comment if you want to, push against what I'm saying. Do the work, because it is time to choose. I'm not even going to say what, because we know. For Black folks, we know Jim Crow or something else. We sure don't want Jim Crow. For white folks, Time to choose your own comfort at the demise of others' humanity. And for the people in between, no, they're already getting beat up. They see the light because they're the ones under siege, except for those who are tucked into some of these spaces of technology and stuff. But that's about transaction and money too. I mean, money is a god for many people, a big G god. But it is time to choose. Residents within a reality that is ensconced in spiritual degradation. I say spiritual, not religious. Because if you're soulless, you ain't got no spirit, like that spiritual sort of understanding. And so as the soulless believe in the lack of worth of everything, except their money and them, everything else is degradation. So do you want to sit in that? Be that? Support that? Or is there something other for you? For us? In this ascension, this movement, toward a heightened consciousness and a higher vibration. So I'm going to end it there. I'm going to do part 2. I want to talk more about the pushback and give some really clear examples, and then talk about what do we do with what we see. So that's the next video. Talk a little bit more about the pushback, and then what do we do with what we see. Many of us who are, have a heightened awareness or knowing, intuition, psychic capacity, there's downloads that we're getting all the time about what's happening here. Many of us don't speak on it because we may be afraid of losing our audience. Look, and some of us have just been silent so long, eating crow, because we thought we had to spire within these systems that really hated us, that now that we're out, it's nothing but giving out and understanding and speaking truth to power, even if it is in a spiritual frame, right? And telling our stories. We've been doing that for years, and everybody dismissed many people's stories. And the people that dismiss them are part of the soulless. Anybody that dismisses hardship of anybody else is part of the soulless. And I'm making a big claim there, but it is true. Because no one should be able to watch any piece, any citizen, any piece of humanity have not. Period. And those that sit in that and accept it and make excuses for it, look them in the eye and understand that you're dealing with somebody who is soulless. If I treat you with racism, you ain't got to turn it inward and personalize that stuff. Understand the person that delivered it. They are soulless. Soulless. Hey! I know that was deep, huh? That was deep. I felt kind of deep. But you know what? I'm gonna show y'all something, all right? So please comment, like, and subscribe. If anything at home, I'm gonna tell you, we're following up with this with more examples. And then what do we do with what we see? And in the meantime, I want you to know that the spring surprise, where you get 75% off eligible sessions with a star image on my website, that's resonance healing sessions, as well as psychic advising sessions, 75% off. So this is the QR code. This takes you, I believe, straight to my website. You can also get to it through link in bio, where you can see the sessions, pay, and book. This goes on until June 20th, 2026. Okay. And I also want to say, the link in bio, you can access free practice guides to help you begin to recognize patterns, right? They're practice guides with reflection and activities and exercises. So you can recognize, you can read about the scarcity pain matrix to get more information on this 3D reality in a way that you maybe have not thought about it before. Okay. And then there's guides about releasing with reflections, meditation, exercises. There's also reframing material, practice guides on how you reframe. Link in bio, they're free. Access them to help you choose during the soulless Renaissance reemergence. They're there for you. Okay. And that's all I got to say. And for anybody else who's interested in reading my story, coming through the dark night of the soul and coming out the other side, and I'm still, coming out, claiming, reframing, but I am on the other side. I'm outside of the dark night of the soul, although, as I mentioned earlier, my father passed. I'm not in the dark night of the soul, but it is a time of, disruption. Okay. This is the electronic version, $5.99. It's a little bit shorter than the paper book, but it gives you a lot of insight as to, it's my story, but it talks about the need to release external validation, okay? Our reliance on being externally validated, okay? And how releasing that could look like, all right? And so I thank y'all today for your time and attention. I'm glad I got here. I feel so much better. Everything in the world was sort of interfering with this talk. I don't know what that means. Look, but I got on. I wasn't taping. Like, as I said earlier, I was doing a live stream. I hadn't pressed record. Then as I was making, and that was purposeful, was good though, because I went back and reworked the script. And then when I was printing it out to do it, the printer wasn't working. It was sending me out pages with half of it all being black. Look, spirits move. The ones that are aligned with Ma'at and the ones that are aligned with Isfet, they are working simultaneously. If you don't know Ma'at and Isfet, I asked you to go to Google and look it up. ISFET, Isfet. All right. Thank you, everyone. Just take a deep breath. Let this go. Understanding and awareness comes when it's time. Take a deep breath. Exhale. One more time, inhale. Hold it. I want you to think, set an intention to recognize what it is you need to see, to choose. Exhale. Oh my goodness, that was good. Be blessed. Beautiful souls, I so appreciate you all. And I'm outie. Bye-bye, everybody.